Okay, let us start. So, before we start, let us do a Mangalacharan to Sri Radha Radha Govinda. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Nananjana Shalakaya Chakshumitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Sthapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakana Vittamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dino Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrabhyascha Kripa Sindhavevacha Patitam Nam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Desha Tarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So you all remember what we did yesterday? What was the thing? Can you all anyone tell? Hare Krishna. Anyone can try. So we were doing Buddhi Yoga, Nishkama Karma. That means you have to fight without any reactions. So that was the answer which Krishna gave for Arjuna. He said, he gave an analytical study. So he's telling how to work without fruitive results. Because when you work like that, then you're free from the bondage of the work reactions. So we have to work with one-pointed intelligence. That is Vyavasatmika Buddhir. So this is how, if you are in that, then you are resolute in your purpose, then you can be in this Bhakti Yoga. And then he said, you have a right to perform your prescribed duties, the adhikar hai, but you don't have the entitled to the fruits of your action. Never consider yourself the cause of those fruits, so don't get attached to it. Doesn't mean that you should not do any activity, but you have to do your duty, but not for the results. So, and what happens? A devotional service to the Lord. Just do the service. And then he gave us the benefits of acting in the Buddhi Yoga. That is, you get free from the good and bad reactions. That is freedom from, even if you do pious activities or impious activities, both you get some reactions. Either you'll be happy or you'll be suffering. So you'll be free from those reactions when you do without any when you do it selflessly for the Lord. Then what happens? You get the benefit from by coming out of the cycle of birth and death. Then you will be indifferent to Vedic rituals because Vedas means to know about the Lord. So you don't have to go through all those rituals. It's as good as by working for the Lord, you have overcoming all that. Then, and what is the basic thing? You realize that you are the eternal servant of the Krishna. That is the identity. That's your actual position. And you are the servant because he is the master and he is the one who's controlling everything and he is the cause of all causes. So once you understand that relationship, you are satisfied and you are not perturbed by anything. And you'll be able to go back to Krishna Loka, Godhead. So this is what we saw yesterday. Now this was a beautiful explanation given by the Lord. It was a new concept and Arjuna listened to that, everything. And then he was thinking, how do you understand this? How do you apply it in life? Because this comes the big question. How do we apply it? or as anybody who has applied it. And how do they look? How do I recognize a person who has applied this concept, this in their life, or put it in this? So those things which I'm going to see in now the coming verses. So who is this Sthita Prajna? That is one who is one-pointed intelligence, Vyavasthatmik Buddhi. So we are, well, the Lord has given us the jnana, that is, yeah, the Atma, not the soul, or not the body. And we talked about our duty. And then he said you have to go beyond that enjoyment because you have to do the work selflessly. Nishkama karma yoga. Do the work without any material desires and do it for the Lord because, and offer the results to the Lord. That is because you accept everything belongs to Him. So this is what we learned, right? Nothing. Now, the question comes from Sthita Prajna, how to be fixed in this Krishna consciousness. So this is the question which Arjuna asked. So when we saw in the last previous verse, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when you remain fixed in this trance of self-realization, you have attained divine consciousness. That's what the Lord says. You will be in Samadhi. So how do we understand that? Sita Dhira Muni. So Arjuna Vacha. Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha. Ka bhasha. Ka bhasha means what is the language? Samadhi tasya keshava sthita di kim prabhasheta kim ashita vrajate kam. So, what are the symptoms and of one whose consciousness is thus meditating on the transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? So it doesn't mean that literally how he speaks, whether he's speaking softly or loudly or anything, or what is his language means what is the, whether he Sanskrit or when it's not, and how does he sit? How does he behave? It's not the physical behavior which is Arjuna is trying to ask you. So philosophical. So, and it is important for us also because if you want to know about this and if you want to understand this philosophy or if you understand what the Lord is saying and how to implement it, we should have at least a role model. No? We should have somebody who has done it, who has realized it, and who is a Sthita Dhira, right? If you have known that, then if you know the symptoms of that, then you'll be able to recognize the person who has been in this Krishna consciousness. So it is actually important for us. So that, see, when throughout this Bhagavad Gita, you might see whenever Arjuna is asking a question or is putting this argument, it is actually from our point of view, how to understand the whole philosophy, right? So this is what the whole thing is. How does he speak? And this is not for any ordinary person he's asking. He's asking about a person who has got this one-pointed intelligence. He said, no, Vyavasthatmik Buddhi. So he wants to know about that kind of people, not for the ordinary persons, right? So this is the context, because it is from that context only this question has come from Arjuna. How does he speak? Symptoms. This is what we are covering in these verses. Okay. Symptoms in the 55th verse. How does he speak is 56, 57. 58, 63, Krishna answers about how he sits and how he walks. So let us see what is there. And this, we can see it in our Prabhupada also. The way he speaks, how he, because he was always thinking he's following his master's orders, right? And it was, you could see it, and people could see how he was in Krishna consciousness, and he was living it. He was, whatever he stopped and whatever he's been thinking, he was there as an example to them. And when you say speak, means how he reacts to the situations, how he is acting to the people, and when people talk to him or when they think our different situations when he puts, and how he responds to that. And then mental and how he's so calm, even the way he is, the mentality he has, and how is his senses, he's not perturbed, how he is able to control his senses, and how he's situated, and how he engages his senses, because he's all the time thinking how I can serve my master, how I can spread this Krishna consciousness, how I can have these things. So that was there in him. And also the Goswamis also, you have the parampara examples and also his spiritual masters. So these are the things which are there in our script, which you now take to life. So what does the Lord say? Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajati Yeda Kaman Sarva Pata Manogatan Atmani Evatmana Tushta Stita Prajna Tadochati. Blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, which arise from mental confusion, and when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. That is the thing. And what is this mental concussion? What happens from the mind? How does a desire come? Like, when you see something, we'll say, oh, I like this thing very much. Or you will be thinking, no, I don't like this. So the mind is always judging. Whenever it sees something or listens to something or thing, it will always say either I like it or I don't like it. I like this, I don't like that. And this is not the way it should have been done. Or this is the way it should be done. I mean, that thing keeps going in your mind, it happens to everybody. Or if you enter into a shopping mall, you may not wanting to buy those things, but still your mind will be looking at those objects and making its own comments, whether it's liking it or not liking it. So it's like that mental concoction will be there. And so he says that desire arises from this mental concoction. But if it is finds satisfaction in self alone, then is said to be pure tangible consciousness. So how he gives up his variety of desires? It doesn't mean that he is having without desires, but there is desires, right? So what does Prabhupada writes? The Bhagavatam confirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of great sages. Whereas a person who is not so transcendently situated has no good qualifications. Because he is taking refuge to his own mental concoctions. That's what I said. No, whether I like it, I don't like this, or I hate this person, I like that person. And like that, things goes on in his own mind. So if he succumbs to that, then he is not situated in this thing. So he is not rightly situated. He has to give up such kind of sense desire manufactured by things. Artificially, you cannot suppress your sense desires. It cannot be stopped. See, that is there because your mind is always working and it's all active. You cannot. But if you engage in Krishna consciousness, then what happens? You're engaging. You want to do everything for the Lord. You want to engage all your senses. I mean, you want to hear only the Krishna Katha. You want to do only speak about the Lord, or you want to only associate with such people. So what happens? Then automatically the sense desires for the material things subsides. He says their sense desires subsides without any extra efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. Because that's the only thing which will help. Because once you work for a devotional service, you are in the transcendent spiritual plane. Then he'll be satisfied in himself because he is all the time conscious that he is the servant of the Lord, eternal servant of the Lord. That is his consciousness. This is how they always be thinking about it, right? This is what the Lord says. That is the person who is in his pure transcendence when he is able to gives up all variety of desires. So this we found even in scriptures. Prahlad was like that. He was all the time remembering the Lord. He engaged in that full concentration. So he was not perturbed by what his father was doing to him or what these people know who had followed the king's orders and they putting him into a snake pit or trying to punish him with the swords or putting him thing. He was not perturbed because he was all the time in consciously remembering the Lord and he was thinking about the Lord because he knew he is the one, the servant. And even when they put him in the fire also, it was the same and thing. And we can also talk about our Prabhupada. He was all the time thinking how I can complete my master's orders because he was asked him to spread this consciousness to the English-speaking people. And this is a photo where he was in Vrindavan, taken sannyas, and he is trying to translate the books from Srimad Bhagavatam to English. And he was all the time in front of Rupa Goswami's this thing, samadhi, and the contemplating how he could do this, fulfill his master's order. So this is how the people who's all the time thinking with just one thought, nothing else, that is to serve the Lord. So that's what Bhagavan Uvacha. He says, this is how a person who is there in Sthita Prajna, how his symptoms are. Okay. So I think we read this fully consciousness. So we looked at that. So, and then our speech. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amongst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, or is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. And what are the threefold miseries? The miseries will be like, miseries from his own body or mind, or it could be from other living entities, or it could be from the natural causes. Okay. And even is not disturbed when any of such happenings and things, or when there is happiness that it becomes so elated and no. And attachment, fear, and anger is called a sage of steady mind. So speech is to see how he reacts to the situations of different situations. It's not actually literally speaking, right? So this is what Prabhupada writes in the purport. Word Muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways from introspect without coming to a factual conclusion. But a Sthira Muni is, as mentioned here by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. Okay? He is always in Krishna consciousness because he has exhausted all creative speculation as one as upper stage of things. So, for him, Lord Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samhatma Sudal. For him, everything is the Lord. Everything is caused by the Lord. He is the cause of all causes. So he is fixed in his mind. He has got control on his mind. And he is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold messages. Because why he is not perturbed? He accepts everything as a mercy of the Lord. That's what it is. He says, even if the difficulties come, and it could come materially. So materially, there will be some distress. There could be some miseries in the material platform or thing, but internally he'll be very satisfied. He's not perturbed. Doesn't mean that just because a person becomes a devotee of the Lord, that he won't suffer in the material world. He will have his quota of happiness, his quota of distress, everything will be the sufferings. But internally, because he's all the time thinking of the Lord, he's saying he'll be happy. Spiritually, he'll be happy. That's what here the Lord says. This is how a Sthita Prajna Muni is. So, and he thinks that misery is as a mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past deeds, and that by the grace of the Lord is minimized to the Lord. He thinks, actually, I should have suffered much more, but due to the mercy of the Lord, I'm only getting this much. Similarly, when he's happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that is only due to Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable position. And he says, because he has been put in a comfortable position, he can render better service to the Lord. So this is everything which is happening, he gives the credit to the Lord. And also influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means you are accepting things for his own sense gratification or absence of thing, because you are attached to the desire to have that senses. So that is what it is. So when a person who is fixed in this, he will not be angry, or whether the success is there or failure is there, he is always steady in his determination. Determination in what? That he has to serve the Lord and he is a servant of the Lord. Because he is fixed in that identity, he knows that. So he will accept everything from the Lord. So that is how he behaves. So in the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Because this is how Sthita Prajna is, right? Now, how does he sit? So here Krishna says, one who is able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects As the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, he is firmly fixed in purpose. See, the tortoise is very, very interesting animal. So whenever they see it's any trouble, what happens? It immediately goes inside its shell. And its shell is so hard, nobody can attack it. And only when things is needed or when he sees there's no danger, that's only time when he comes out, puts his head out and his legs out and he moves around. Otherwise, he will just withdraw himself. So here, the same way, Prabhupada writes here, one is able to withdraw from sense objects as a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in perfections. So the test of a devotee is that he is able to control the senses according his plan. Okay. Most people are a servant of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation, because today the material is so much of distraction. So we easily get carried away by that, right? And it's not that able to think. Like, you think like, you want to say the TV show is going on, you say, okay, I'll just sit in front of it for 5 minutes or just see for 10 minutes. And suddenly you realize that for a whole hour you have been sitting there looking at it. So there are many temptations here. So the senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. So ye must be very strong to control the serpents. Okay. So there are many things, actually there are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures, what you should do, what you should not do, and how to control, how to restrict from that. So it's not possible to be firmly fixed Krishnas. So here is given the example of tortoise. Senses of Krishna consciousness are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and not withdrawn with otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use the senses for service. So only if it is favorable for the Lord, you do it. If it is unfavorable for the Lord, you just avoid. That's what is being told here. So one who is having a control on his mind and senses and he is able to do it, such a person is known as Sthita. Okay. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But seizing such enjoyment by experience attains. So what he means to say is, sometimes when you try to control your senses or you want to avoid, what happens, you might restrict yourself. But even if you restrict yourself, the taste for doing it will be there. Say like, you might have had some good experience, like you would have gone and eaten some good sumptuous meal, right? And later also you'll be thinking about that though you have finished eating, it must have done it 10 days back and all that. But suddenly when somebody asks, you will remember that and say, oh, it was so nice, the taste was so good. That thing which you have tasted, that happiness or whatever it is, satisfaction, you still linger. So the taste for sense objects will remain. Or suppose you have not liked it, and even after a few minutes, you will say, no, that preparation was not so good and it was saving. So that taste will remain. So here there are certain examples like the sage, though he is trying to withdraw his senses and he wants to be younger, but still if his mind is attracted to the other sex, that thing, if it's still there, then what happens? He may not able to properly. So restricting forcibly won't help us because the taste will still be there. But if you put your senses and engage it for higher taste, that is, if you want to fix it for the Lord, doing some service, then even this taste also will go away because you are fixing on a higher taste, because serving the Lord will give you much more pleasure, much more happiness. So what happens? That will supersede of anything for a material objects. So this is what the Lord says. Once you withdraw, if you engage it for higher taste, then you are able to think. But the senses are so strong and impetus, so Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination, rose and truth. But it's so easy to tell to be fixed in Krishna conscious. But Krishna, your Lord himself is saying, Api Kaunteya, it is very difficult. Indriyani pramatin haranti prasapam. It's very difficult to control them. Like you have seen in many, the thing is such a forceful thing, it will carry away the mind of man to try to control them. So we have seen the example of Durvasa. When he was so perturbed to see how Amrish Maharaj is just a man and he's able to be in Krishna conscience, he couldn't, and he tried to um, distract him. Okay. And he was so angry with him, I think. But Amrish Maharaj was very calm with all that. And Vishwamitra, how he gets carried away by Mayraka. So this is some people who have, though they have been great sages and things, but they have, for them, situations, they did succumb to their senses. So if mind is engaged in Krishna services, sense gratification becomes distasteful. Mind easily is controlled. So we have the example of Amrish Maharaj who engaged all his senses for Krishna service. And it is there. So these are the examples. How he sit, that means how he behaves, how he engages his senses. That's what we means by these are the symptoms of a thing. So one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Okay. So we have a Prabhupada who was fixed in his mission, and he was not perturbed when even had some heart attacks during his journey. He had nobody to help him there in the West, but still he struggled. And it was a new culture, you're seeing people, and they were all materially absorbed. So it was difficult. He was in a situation that was totally alien to him, but he was very steady intelligence. So he keep them under control. And even at that age, he used to cook for himself, he used to think, and he never come out of it. So this is one, engaging all the service senses in the service of Krishna. When you are doing that, then Paramatma burns up all impurities in your heart. You are under, but because you have fixed your consciousness in the Lord, Lord is very merciful and He'll help you to think. So how these senses are so powerful? So because Arjuna asked, even if I try to do it, there is some force which is pulling me to do these sinful actions. So then the whole theory of the lust, how that this I think happens. Then Krishna is continuing to say, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment, okay, for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger. Initially, you'll be just looking at the object. You might only think about, you may not show this. Only where, but slowly what happens when you start contemplating on it, meditating on it, then slowly you develop an attachment. Like a boy sees a girl, initially a girl sees the boy. Then slowly they feel like some attachment starts happening, and there's some attraction comes, and they start have some attraction and some relation. And when such attachment, lust develops. Then you slowly become too attached to it. Then your lust develops. And then you become, then when something frustration, when the desires are not satisfied and everything, then anger arises. Kama krodha abhijayati. And then what happens when there's an anger? Then slowly, when you're so angry that you lose your thinking power, complete delusion arises, and there will be bewilderment of memory, and memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and intelligence is lost, one falls down with the material. Even you can go down to killing the other person. So the krodha bhavata sammoha. So this is how the whole thing starts, the cycle. It starts with the seeing the object, sense object, and then you start getting attached to it, and then lust becomes so much strongly attached that you don't want to leave it. And even then you'll get into that, you don't want to lose it, and you'll be so want to hold on to it. And if there's something happens, then your anger starts, and then continues to delusion, bewilderment of memory, loss of intelligence. Okay. So let us see if I have that. So here Prabhupada again emphasizes here, it's already explained that one may control the senses by some artificial process, but unless it's engaged in the transcendental service, there's every chance of a fall. So maybe person in full consciousness may apparently be on sensual plane because of his being Krishna conscious. He has no attachment to his activities. His concern is what is his concern only with the satisfaction of Krishna, nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, that devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undeserved. If he doesn't want, he shall not do which he would have done for his own satisfaction. So, therefore, to act or not to act is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. So, this is what of the causeless mercy of the Lord, which did not achieve in spite of being attached to the second. So this is how the lust, we get caught into this cycle and then we fall down after losing our intelligence. So this is how the Lord even explained for the different reasons which he gave for Arjuna. That is, first when Arjuna gave his doubts and said, then he completely surrendered, understanding that he couldn't clarify his doubts because he couldn't understand, he was indecisive, whether to fight or not to fight. So finally he surrenders to the Lord, asking him, saying, you are my Guru now, I'm your Shishya, you please tell me what is best for me. Then the Lord starts off with for the different reasons he had, no compassion, no enjoyment, then sinful reactions, loss of tradition, and then indecision, and things. So for that, the Lord starts off with giving him the knowledge, saying, there is no death for the soul because we are the soul and not the body. And you have to fight. And then you won't be killing and they will get a new body. And then continues to say, Karma Kanda. Then he talked from that angle. Now he talks from the material perspective. He says, it's your duty as a Kshatriya. Whatever your prescribed duties, you do it. And don't bother about the gains. So here in this case, if you lose, you'll go to heavenly abode, or if you gain, you'll get the kingdom. So everything is a win-win situation. You just fight. Then later it goes to beyond that you go because you work for me. That is Nishkama Karma, because everything belongs to me. And then when you do that, there won't be any reactions, sinful reactions, and you will also be free from this cycle of birth and death. And he will get. So, and how such a person thinks and how he fixes in Krishna consciousness, we saw the symptoms. And then he concludes saying, the lust is so powerful, the sense objects, it is difficult to control. But if you try to engage to be in Krishna consciousness. So service for the cause of the Lord is called Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, or in plain words, devotional service to the Lord is the one which can. This is the process of Krishna consciousness, to engage yourself in devotional service to the Lord. Okay, what do we do?